Oh, Davey's not in the shot. We can't have that.
I don't care about being in there. You can
Oh, dude, come on now. You're the star of the show.
Oh, stop it. Don't make me blush, okay?
All right.
We're in Arizona right now, and we drove in last night, drove straight through from California. It was like a 16-hour drive or something, and we got in at 3 in the morning. So we're pretty tired, but we slept in this morning, and we've got a storm coming in. So we're gonna go out and see if we can glass up some deer before this storm hits, and see if we can catch any bucks on the move, something we can stock.
So just to be clear, we're catching deers today?
We're catching deers.
Oh, yeah. First day of 2023.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true.
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
Happy New Year.
January
Yeah,
1st,
Happy New Year.
2023.
Awesome.
So we're after deer in the new year.
Ooh.
Oh, that was pretty good.
Beignet West.
Boy.
And after that it's 40%, and then at 3 a.m. it's 30%, and after that it's just cloudy.
Alright, so we only have about 20-30 minutes of light left. So we just came over here to a new area that we've never been to before. And just glassing really quick to try to come up with a game plan for tomorrow. And we're actually seeing a lot of coos deer. No mule deer yet, but probably seeing what, 6 or 7 coos deer right here, just within 200 yards of us. So not enough time to actually hunt, but we figured instead of going to the cabin, we figured we'd come out here and at least help.
Not the cabin, the backpack 5 miles deep base camp.
Yes, my bad. After this, we're gonna park the truck and then hike about 15 miles back to our camp barefoot.
That's great, that's better for you, I'm sure. This morning we got up, the rain had cleared out, everything was looking peachy ducky for a great hunt. So we got in the truck and went out to our hunting grounds, and the weather was starting to turn on us again. So we were out there a few hours, turned up a few does on a ridge. I don't think there was a buck in that group. I think it was 7 or 8 does, and we watched them until they eventually rolled over the backside of the ridge. So then we moved. So after we moved locations, we're driving down the road, kind of headed out for lunch, making our way out of the area that we're hunting toward the main highway. And Clayton saw some movement off the side of the road, slammed on the brakes. We all pile out of the car, and there's like 35 mule deer just standing there looking at us. There was a couple of small bucks in the group. So David and I decided to try to make a play. I grabbed a camera, he grabbed his bow, and we took off running to try to cut the deer off. He's behind him, he's standing out. There was no way they outran us. The string of deer was like 600 yards long by that time, and we couldn't get in front of them. So it really was, dude. They were going from that spot like all the way over the hill and down there.
I'm thinking of the video. It's just deer after deer after deer.
So that didn't work out, but we were super encouraged. It was nice to see a good number of deer finally. So we were like, awesome, let's go to lunch. So we get in the car and making a beeline for the highway. Well, just about that time, we come up to a crossroads and we're like, you know what, that looks too juicy to pass up. Let's just glass it real quick. So we jump out and glass, and sure enough, David finds a group of deer off on the hillside.
So we made a game plan, and the wind was right in our face, like the wind was blowing from the deer right to us. So everything was perfect. The ground was really soft because of all the rain. So me and Ben moved in, and we closed the distance pretty quick and got to within about 100 yards. And basically right when we crested the ridge where we could see the deer, we were already within about 100 yards. And for the first few minutes, the deer had no idea we were there, and then something happened. I'm not sure what it was, but one of the does went on alert, but they didn't blow out. They still stayed in the area. And then they started walking downhill, like the lead doe started going downhill to our left and even started coming around to kind of get downwind of us. So we just stayed hunkered down, and we could see the buck here and there, but never really got a clear shot. And then all the does and the buck followed that lead doe to our left, and we got cool footage of him, and it was a pretty close. It was a good encounter and a really close call. So, but I wasn't able to send an arrow down range.
So after we had lunch, we decided to explore a new area that was closer to where we ate lunch and closer to where our house is. Pulled into some country that we'd never been to, never looked out on the map, we just kind of went. And we started glassing and driving, that's kind of the drill here. And I turned up a group of coos deer.
Wind is terrible. So we're here to hunt mule deer, and then a coos deer buck popped out, so now we're hunting coos deer. We saw him across this canyon, and a little bit of weather came through, but I hawed and finally decided to go for a stalk. So it's about a 3/4 mile stalk, and we're gonna give it a whirl and see how it goes. So we blew it. It's all right. He came around the corner, and we were still moving, and they didn't see us, but they heard us and they spooked off. And then they stopped in the bottom of the canyon, so we came back around the other way and tried to get on them. And we probably would have made it happen, but there was some does that weren't even related to this group of deer on the opposite side of the canyon. And they saw us plain as day coming down the hillside. We were hidden from the buck, but these does busted us, so they all went off in a big party. So next stalk.
We're really encouraged because several of the bucks we've seen, including the coos buck and the mule deer buck that we both stalked, were, exhibiting pretty strong rutting behavior. The does didn't seem to be in estrus yet. The bucks weren't really hard on them, but they did have their nose down and checking out all the does and seeing what was going on. So we're really hopeful that as each day passes, there's going to be more and bigger rutting bucks. We're excited. Tomorrow looks like the first day we're going to have good clear weather all day, and the bucks are starting to move into the rut, and we've got tabs on a couple of different groups of mule deer does with little bucks. So it's going to be really interesting to see if some big bucks start coming out to play and we can get on a couple more good stalks. So there's a
It's
doe.
a legal one. That's
There's a
what we know.
doe behind the buck. That's like 100% a mule deer doe. So we've got a group of deer up here. We finally located a buck this morning. David's been the master buck spotter of all time. We've spotted deer in every hill in this draw we're in. And finally got a group they're moving fast, but there's 3 or 4 does and a buck. The weird thing is right now, it's a long ways away. We're having trouble because the buck, his antlers are shaped like a coos deer and it kind of looks like a coos buck. But the doe that's right behind him is definitely a mule deer doe. So we're kind of like, what's going on? But anyway, we're just gonna follow them and see what they do. I mean, I'd shoot him. You're a shooter.
Well, you spotted him.
No, you're a shooter. Anything that happens, we need to wait until they stop moving. They may just come down to the flat and give us an easier opportunity.
Ben and I decided to jump in the wash and stay low and get below the bluffs and then try to head them off because it looked like they were angling down off the hill towards the valley. So we get in the wash and we make tracks and we get over the knob that's about halfway between us and the deer, and we can't find the deer. We kept pushing, went around the face where they disappeared, and no deer. So we thought, okay, they have to be in this canyon that's behind these bluffs. So we climb up to the top of the canyon, we crest over the top. I mean, we're moving slow. It's intense. We think these deer are gonna be right below us as soon as we step out. We step over into the canyon, nothing. It's just dead quiet. So we're like, okay, maybe they went up the canyon a little further and we're gonna run into them. It's kind of like a box canyon. So we stay high and we move across the backside of this canyon. We're moving really slow, glassing ahead, nothing. It's just dead. We get all the way to the end of that stretch of bluffs and we wound up blowing out 2 does that were bedded at the bottom, but not with the group that we had glassed. So pretty much the buck disappeared into some other canyon before we even got close. So it wasn't really a stalk, but we got to see some amazing country. And in fact, we came across a human trail at the top of this canyon, like way back in the middle of nowhere. And we come on this trail it's wider, clearly wider than a game trail. And then we start seeing trash littered everywhere, and old trash too. So stuff with labels missing. We're starting to see tin cans, forks, and spoons. And then in little pockets and caves, we saw signs of human activity, like we saw some bedrolls tied up. So clearly, being this close to Mexico, we've come across a trafficking trail. So that was a pretty neat experience, being able to see that and seeing the conditions that these people, I mean, they're passing into this country, they're hiding under rocks and caves, eating out of cans. It's pretty wild. You hear about this stuff, but you never get to see it in person. So our deer stalk turned into a Nat Geo filming expedition in the backcountry. So that was pretty cool. So we had to stop at this cactus, which 25, 30 feet tall. It's massive and probably big around as a 55-gallon drum. So cool.
The rut is just starting to kick off, so we figured maybe the big boys are still hanging out in the flats. So we found a spot to glass. We were looking over a lot of country, and wasn't too long after that we found some does and a buck coming up out of the flats onto a little knob. These deer came up on the side of the hill about 1,200 yards away. We saw them coming up and there happened to be a buck in the group. So David and I went down for a stalk. We made our way across the flat and started stalking up to him. The problem was with the wind the way it was coming in our face when we were stalking toward him. Best case scenario would have been if we could have made our way around the back of the hill and come over on top of him. But with the wind the way it was, we had to approach from the front and they had the advantage on us. So we did our best to stalk in, but they busted us when we were crossing from one creek to the next to try to get in there. And that was it. They blew out, they went over the hill, and that stalk was over, and that pretty much wrapped up our night. Man, we could have waited till the shade cast. That was dumb, I just realized that. Well, we had to walk across a clear spot through these trees to get around on the deer, and we walked a little too fast probably because they busted out and ran over the hill. It's hard to stalk in this open country like this, so we're gonna recalibrate and
maybe we'll see something tonight on our way out that we can put a quick stalk or shoot. So off we go.
So this is our second stop of the morning, and we finally found where the mule deer are hanging out, because that's primarily what we're after, is mule deer. This spot looked likely, and sure enough, Ben spotted a group of deer over here, probably 700 yards off, 600 yards off. So we're trying to pick through the crowd. There's like 7 or 8 does, see if there's a buck with them. There should be. We're getting into the rut now.
All right, so we've got a 3x3 spotted with like 5 or 6 does. Right now, he's probably 3/4 of a mile directly down the creek from us. So we're all gonna go up on the hill where we can look down on the hillside that he went into, and hopefully we'll get a visual on him, see if he's bedded down or if they're just up feeding, and then we'll come up with a better game plan. So we were up on the hillside, and we spotted a huge herd of mule deer moving from right to left in this flat, and they were walking in single file line. I mean, there was like 35, 40 deer, and so we figured there'd have to be a buck in there. So we just kept watching them, and sure enough, we saw actually a wounded mule deer. It was like a big forky, and it had blood going down its right front leg, and it was limping really bad, so it got wounded by another hunter. So me and Clayton got our gear together, and Ben stayed up top to spot for us, and me and Clayton just hoofed it down there to the flats to try to intercept the deer. And we got really lucky. I mean, we got to within 50 yards of Limpy, and he was bedded down, and right when we saw him, he spotted us at the same time. So we only had a couple of seconds. I mean, Clayton was glassing, and Clayton goes, "There he is, there's Limpy." And so I stepped over to draw back and get ready for a shot, and right when I did that, Limpy just jumped up and took off. And so it was a close call. It was, what was it, 50 yards, 54 yards, something like that. And what's crazy is, while we were stalking in on Limpy, we had deer literally all around us, 180 degrees to our left, in front of us, to our right. I mean, it was really difficult even trying to get in there on that buck, because there were so many eyes. And as we got in that flat, we realized there was more than 35 deer. There was around 60 deer in there, and they were just spread out. They weren't all together as one tight herd. They were spread out over about a 200-yard distance.
Well, Clayton and David, they made a stalk over here, and it wasn't successful, unfortunately. They got within 40 yards, though. We're getting closer every time. So I was spotter on this one, and I was just over here just absolutely cooking in the sun. But they're making their way back to the truck now, so I'm going to pack everything up and hike off this hill and meet them over there, and then on to the next deer.
So we come into this canyon, we park, and we're starting to glass all around us. Well, it wasn't too long before we picked up a buck on some does, and he was kind of rutting around a little bit and pushing them. So Clayton decides to do a stalk. I'm running the camera. We have to jump in a wash and really make tracks to try to get below him and cut him off.
We're gonna get down in this creek bed and try to cut the distance.
We got all the way around in front of where this buck was going, and right as we were getting ready to get into a shooting position, he was probably about 60 yards. The wind swirled and he caught our wind, so he took his does and they went right over a hill just out of our view. So we went back, made another game plan, and decided to try to get on him again because we could see him standing on the next hillside with his does. So we got in the truck and we drove right past him and parked on the other side of the hill around back. So then I was shooter, and Clayton and I hiked up around the back of the hill and came over the top. We did everything right, perfectly. We stalked right in. The does were all there. They stood up. They were about 80 yards, and the buck's not with them. We don't know what happened. We don't know where he went. He just did the buck thing and disappeared. So we were in a shooting position. We could have shot any one of those does we wanted,
but no dice. The buck disappeared.
Well, we've been here for 6 weeks.
Well,
We've been here for like 5 days.
Sorry.
And we're pretty pooped. These deer are kicking our butts. It's been a blast. We've seen hundreds of deer, a lot of bucks. It's still pre-rut, but we could see signs that bucks are rutting around. They're filtering into these basins. But they're tough. I mean, that's the nature of bow hunting. So we had 3 different stalks today. Came really close, within 80 yards on 2 of them. So just couldn't get it done. We got 1 more day tomorrow. We'll grind it out.
Thursday night, we just got back to the cabin after our deer hunt, and we had some close calls today, but we didn't close the deal. So now Ben's cooking up some steaks. We're gonna have some steak and salad and veggies. Our wives would be proud of us. And then we're gonna call it a night and hit it one more time in the morning.
Kill a big old buck this big. That's one we're gonna kill.
Yep.
Dave's gonna shoot him. So today is Friday, last day of the hunt. We got just a couple hours to hunt this morning, and we got into a good glassing spot.
And here comes a buck out the bottom, headed towards these does. He's gonna go see if he's got a hot doe. So it's the perfect scenario. Thermals are in the perfect position to get in front of this deer. So we make a game plan. The other guys are gonna stay at the top of the hill. I'm gonna go solo. I'm gonna circle all the way around. So I take off and I skirt the whole backside of the hill to stay out of sight. And I get over in this saddle and I can see the buck at the bottom of the hill. He'd left the does, he crossed the creek bed, and he's probably 180 yards or so from me. And I see him start coming up the hill, straight to me. I'm in the perfect position. It's a really nice, tall 4x4, not huge, no trophy, but a really nice buck. So I thought, okay, I'm over here on this side of the saddle. He's heading towards the front side of the saddle. I got to get downhill and I got to cut some distance. So I wait till he disappears and then I scoot up to a big mesquite bush.
I cannot believe it, you guys. This buck is headed straight for Clayton. Clayton's in a saddle to the left of this buck by only 150 yards, and that buck is quickly making time directly to that saddle. Look, Clayton is right there. Oh my goodness, dude. This is gonna be crazy.
And I'm standing there, I start taking my ranges. So if he crosses there, this is 30 yards, there it's 50 yards. I'm ready to go. Everything's ready to go. I got my arrow knocked, and I see him start filtering through the trees below me. He's 100 yards, he's 80 yards, he's 70. He's gonna come exactly in the perfect spot. So I range where I know he's gonna go. And there's a mesquite, a wide open space for probably 15 yards, and 1 ocotillo. That's it, just wide open. So I thought, okay, I need to draw my bow back, but I'm gonna wait until this buck's head is behind this ocotillo so he doesn't see me, so I don't bust him with the draw. So I'm standing stock still, he doesn't know I'm there. He walks the perfect path, right in front of me, he's broadside. So I wait till his head is behind the thickest part of this ocotillo. I draw my bow, and he stops. And all of his vitals are right behind the ocotillo. And I knew right then it was over. That was it. So unfortunately, he saw me. Ocotillo, they have these spindly sticks sticking up in these little gaps of where you can see through them. And it was just, their peripheral vision it's incredible. So that was it. He busted. I never had a shot at his vitals. 50, I think it was 54 yards. And I just got to watch him bound over the hill into his eternity. Let me take this earpiece out.
Right to you.
He walked into my pocket.
I was so concerned that right as the buck was like right in bow range that my phone would run out of storage. So I stopped pressing record when the buck, literally right before he shot,
because then I was gonna press record again when he got like 60 yards from the
I saw him
from the
coming up
saddle.
the hill.
I didn't know you weren't in the saddle. I didn't know you'd already made your way down the hill.
Seriously, I'm ticked. Like, it was so perfect. He came in on a string. Forgot to turn on the camera, so there's that. Just fire me from the channel. Like, he stopped, he went behind an Ocotillo, and the Ocotillo was 54, he was right behind it.
Oh my goodness.
So I waited to draw till I thought his head was behind the sticks. So he didn't see me, but he saw me. So when I drew back, his entire body was behind an Ocotillo, and I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Man, that's frustrating.
So what would you have done different?
I would have had to draw when he was in the wide open. That was the only shot, the only chance I had. But I just overthought it. Even though we didn't get it done, it's been an incredible experience and spectacular views. Just getting out here into the terrain and getting to experience, you know, the desert, chasing these mule deer around, watching the sunset, seeing these mountain ranges off in the distance. It's incredible. It's a privilege to be out here.
So it's been a really fun hunt. We've enjoyed it. It's been a great experience. We still got tags in our pockets, so we may be back later this year. So stay tuned for more videos. We appreciate you guys watching and hope you enjoy the video.